Hello guys, my name is Raza Masood. Today we will discuss about Agile and Scrum. Friends, whoever is basically studying or working in a software industry, he definitely heard these two terms most commonly in software industry like Agile and Scrum. So now the topic is what is basically the difference between Agile and Scrum, because many times we have noticed that people are basically using the Agile and Scrum, both these two terms interchangeably, and very commonly they are using. So many times whenever I was working in software industry, so many time I think from my own mind that what is basically the difference between Agile and Scrum, and which one is better, and is it so they are they same or something different. These are the two terms. So I decided to make a video on this topic. So today's topic is what is basically Agile and what is Scrum. Is there any difference exist between these two terms, or are they same? So let's start our tutorial. First of all, I would request to please subscribe to my channel and also click on the bell option. So let's start. First of all, the most important terminology is waterfall approach. What is basically waterfall approach? First, let me try to explain the waterfall approach. Friend, waterfall approach is basically approach to implement a software project. What is the approach? Just see this definition, this picture in which waterfall exists and it's falling, water is falling from the mountain. Just try to understand that this is a basically a sequential approach. Similarly, in the waterfall approach, we plan, then develop, then test, then deploy, and then maintenance. All these phases are basically exist in sequence, and we cannot go beyond, we cannot go in the reverse direction. Like that means that we must have to first we have to plan, then develop, then test. We can't do like that first we after testing we again develop and then again do the planning. This is not the waterfall approach, because this is the sequential approach. This is the sequential approach in which we can go only in linear direction, in one direction. We can't do like that, first we will deploy and then again do the testing, or again first we do the maintenance and then do the deployment. This is not the waterfall approach, in which we can't go in the reverse gear or reverse manner. We have to go in the linear approach, or phase wise approach, or sequential approach. We have to first plan, then develop, then test, then deploy, and then maintenance. So this is called the waterfall approach of software development or project implementation. Friends, waterfall by nature is very rigid and not easy for acceptance of changes in a project. So waterfall approach is basically focus on processes and tools. It requires strong documentations. It also focus on contracts, signed contracts, and also it religiously follows the plans. So this is called the waterfall approach. But remember one thing, that waterfall approach is very rigid and not flexible in terms of change management. So now the other approach came in market, which is you can say the more flexible and more adaptive as compared to waterfall. So what is basically the Agile manifesto, or what is basically Agile gives you? Agile basically, if process and tools, waterfall focus on process and tools, so Agile focus on individual interaction, like it focus on the teams, it focus on the product owners, it focus on the customer. So it basically focus on the individual interaction. It doesn't focus, it does not means that any processes exist in the Agile methodology. Agile, for there are some processes, but main focus is not on the processes and tools. Their main focus is on the individual interactions. Agile basically relies on the working software, because the customer basically want the working software, whereas the waterfall is mainly focused on the documentation. It requires strong documentation, but the agile tells you that the working software is more important, like documentation is less required, but main focus in the is on the working software. Similarly, waterfall depends or mainly focus on the contracts negotiation, signed contracts, etc. However, the agile is basically does not main focus is on contracts. Is their main focus is on customer collaboration, customer interactions, customer feedback, etc. So it depends on the agile is more inclined towards customer interactions rather than focusing on lengthy contracts. Waterfall mainly focus on following the plans, the detailed plans, and is very difficult to accept any change during the plan, because if a project starts, so waterfall is very rigid. They will never accept. There are so many phases are required, and acceptance criteria are required to accept a change, and changes in plans are very difficult to accept in waterfall. However, agile is more flexible to acceptance of changes in a agile approach. It's more flexible, more adaptive to accept the change, because agile says that whenever you start a project, it is not necessary to do all the plannings and all the things at the very early stage. It will evaluate, it will elaborate with the passage of time, and customer needs changes when we grow and when we move forward. The customer requires more changes, so agile is more flexible towards the changes. Now agile is basically friends is basically you can say approach or umbrella in which different frameworks, multiple frameworks exist, like extreme programming, scrum, kanban, and fdd. Friends, remember one thing, that basically all these are the frameworks. Agile is basically, you can say, a whole approach or umbrella in which these frameworks exist. Which one? Extreme programming, scrum, kanban, and fdd. So now we will see what is basically the difference between scrum and agile. So see how you can say what we should say, that how scrum adopts the agile approach. Remember, scrum is a framework and agile is a very big approach, or very, you can say, an umbrella, or you can say a scrum is basically a subset of agile approach. So how scrum implement the agile approach? See, in a scrum in agile we say that the individual interactions are required. So in a scrum, daily sprint meeting, scrum meetings are occur, like in which people discuss their ideas, whatever they are doing, what they have done, and what they are planning to do next, and constant communication among the team occurred. So their main focus is on the individual person in the scrum. Like sprint planning meeting, daily scrum meetings. So there are many meetings occurred in which people interact with each other, customer interact with the team, customer interact with the main stakeholders. So individual persons have many opportunities to interact and share their ideas. Then agile main focus is on working software rather than on the strong documentation. And here in the scrum, at the end of every sprint, we have to deliver a piece of task or piece of software to the customer. Sprint is basically, you can say, a 4 to 6 weeks time period in which we have to deliver a chunk of software or chunk of task to customer of working task, so accepted task by the to the customer. Customer collaboration is needed in Agile, and here in a Scrum, you know that in the sprint review meeting, and also there are so many other events or occurrences occurred in which customer feedback will be required, and your customer interacting with the team, giving their feedback. Like in the sprint review meeting, they see the documentation, they see the software, and they gives their feedback, and also they have the full authority to accept the criteria or not accept. So however, customer collaboration is very high in the Scrum, because there are so many meetings like sprint review, sprint planning meetings, etc, etc. So there are so many events or so many ceremonies are there in which customer feedback is very important, and customer is highly interacting with the team at a very early stage. And response to change in Agile is very flexible. Similarly, here in a Scrum, it is whenever change is required. So product owner is the person who basically decides about the changes, and here in the here in the Scrum, the acceptance of changes are not so much complex or rigid as compared to waterfall model. The response to changes and acceptance of changes is flexible, adaptive to the environment and customer needs, and product owner has very much authority to accept the changes. If product owner accept the change, so the team will also accept, and Scrum master also follow the changes. So in the last, I just want to say that basically Agile is basically an overall umbrella and overall approach, in which out of which Scrum is basically a framework which is basically a subset of Agile, and which basically adopts the approach of Agile. Basically Agile tells you that the project implementation or software development should be flexible, and should be inclined towards customer feedback, and the more focus is on the delivery of working software, not on the focus on the processes and tools, strong documentations and contracts, etc. The main focus is on the working software, individuals, customer feedback, and adaptiveness and flexibility in the approach. So that is called the basically Agile, and a Scrum is basically a framework who is basically adopting, who is basically accepting the Agile, and on basis of Agile they are giving you a framework to implement a project using a Scrum framework. So friends, I hope I have tried my level best to explain you the difference between Agile and Scrum. I hope you like this video. Please share it with your friends and colleagues, and also please like it and comment it, and if you like, please share it with your friends and colleagues, and also subscribe to my channel. So friends, I'm very thankful that you have watched my video. If you like, please do comment and ask questions if you have any. So thank you, thanks a lot, thank you, thanks a lot for your time, and thanks for watching the video.